FSB. FSB.
Hello and welcome to this exclusive webinar brought to you by FSB and BSI. That's the Federation of Small Businesses. I'm Dave Sharp and I'll be your host today. And I'm also a proud FSB member and sole trader. So what have we got in store for you in this webinar? Well, we're going to be looking at standards, and you might not be thinking they're for you. They're not just for big businesses, you know, they are for all of us. And we're going to show you how standards can apply to you, particularly in the field of data protection and cybersecurity, and also standards around energy. And obviously they're two really hot topics currently in the world. So what can you expect? Well, you can ask questions. I'm sure you've got plenty. So do drop them in the question box. We'll get to as many of them as we can. You won't be able to join in with the conversation, but you will be able to watch this recording again. So if there's something that you didn't quite get and you want to watch it again, pick it up and you can stay in touch with us that way. Now, don't worry, we're going to be sharing a lot of information, links and all sorts of different websites you can visit and reports you can look for. So we'll send you an email after this webinar and you can pick up all of the links that you want. So you can focus on what's being said in this session. So what are we going to look at? So we'll look at cybersecurity. We'll be looking at standards in general. And by the way, BSI have access to 90,000 UK and international standards. And I'll talk to you a little bit later, and the guys on the screen will talk to you a little bit later about how you can tap into those standards. And we've got a very exclusive membership offer for you. So let's have a look. Who have we got with us today? Well, I'd like to welcome David Bell, Matilda Rhodes, Sarah Walton, Thomas Butler, and Rita Zara. So here they all are appearing on screen. Hi, guys. Nice to see you all. We're going to dive straight in. I'm going to allow you to say who you are and what you do. You do that better than I ever will. But let's kick off with David. So BSI, tell us a little bit about it and the sort of services that you offer.
Morning, Dave. Yeah, I'm David Bell, Director of Standards Policy, and it's great to be with FSB members today. So BSI is the UK's national standards body. So we were appointed by government to bring together all relevant experts in a particular area of interest. So businesses, regulators, environmentalists, professional bodies, government, consumers, academics, etc., to define what is best practice for any particular topic. So they help businesses through the standards to be more productive, to save costs, to win new business. So if you're struggling to demonstrate that you're on a journey towards net zero, or you just want to make a safer product, this is the learned best practice of the day that's encapsulated in those standards. We work with 15,000 UK experts. And they're not just working on UK standards, as you said. Lots of our standards in the UK are actually the same standards that have been adopted all around the world. So they really help you to reach export markets. And we know SMEs who use these standards are far more likely to be successful in export. So in a nutshell, that's standards, Dave.
Well, I mentioned at the beginning, you know, because I think of standards and I think of big business, you know, and I'm a sole trader. There'll be many people tuning in who are small businesses, less than 250 employees. Give us an example. How can I, or people who are watching this, tap in? What sort of standards would they be looking at? I mentioned earlier about data protection. I've mentioned about energy, but that's just two, and we'll talk about those in some detail. So what else might we plug into, as it were?
Well, Dave, like you, I talk to SMEs up and down the country every day, and the challenges that they're facing around access to people and access to finance and energy costs, and in particular meeting regulations, these are all areas that standards can support. That we know that SMEs want to be competitive with bigger brands. They want to compete on a level playing field. And the SMEs I talk to tell me that they can get onto supply chains by demonstrating that they're actually underpinned by the same quality as big companies. So the standard is a leg up essentially to them. So whether it's how do I demonstrate that my processes are consistent, and so I'm going to deliver a safe and quality product, or whether it's a specific challenge I've got, say, for example, around how do I manage my people? We know SMEs don't have huge HR teams to help them with these kind of challenges. We've just published the world's first national standard on how you manage menopause and menstrual health in the workplace. So
Wow.
how can organizations treat their women better? And this standard encapsulates the best practice out there in the industry today. It's there ready for you to take off the shelf and read.
Wow, I didn't know that. And so you're really current, and you're looking at the news and what's topical and what's current all the time, presumably, so that you can take a step ahead of everyone else and get those standards in place.
It's a leg up for companies, whether it's how you adopt safe AI and demonstrate to your customers that you're demonstrating AI in a safe way, or you're making sure that you're part of the green transition. Standards are all there to help you do that. They're a tool, they're a voluntary tool, and they're there to help you.
And I'm assuming you get a little badge or a certificate, do you? You know, we all like a little bit of branding. So do we prove it by having a kind of a logo that we can attach to our premises or our online presence?
We've got a certificate. We're going to send you one, Dave.
Thank you.
This is the
Standards
offer
of clothes.
This is the offer. Yeah, everyone who becomes a BSI member gets a certificate, so you can demonstrate to your customers we're working with standards. We're interested in the same standards that you're interested in. Absolutely.
And that is great, because that is trust, isn't it? You know, you want to gain trust with people, just like you want good testimonials to show that you've got good standards and values, of course. That's important. I'm going to move on. Matilda has joined us. Matilda will tell us a little bit about herself and where she's from. And Matilda, I mentioned earlier about cyber security, and I'm just mindful that you might be on mute, so I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You did it. Brilliant. Well done. So Matilda, cyber issues, is that a costly thing to start looking at where standards are concerned, and how would we go about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think cybersecurity can be a really overwhelming topic, and every business is reliant on their digital assets, like whether it's your customer base stored in your phone to, the way that your payments are processed is probably all going through digital infrastructure. And how do you protect that? It can seem really overwhelming. There are a lot of products out there. Probably some of them have big price tags, but some of the most impactful things that you can do to protect your business in the short term are really cheap. They take a little bit of time. Things about, having the right password policies, using two-factor authentication, so using maybe your phone to add second authentication, training your staff and having that awareness, having plans in place for when something goes wrong. If you're the victim of a cyber attack, you're not expecting it. Just having a little bit of planning in place, knowing which organisations are there to help SMEs, and there are quite a few in the UK. It depends a little bit where you're based. It's worth knowing what the phone number is, at least in advance. And those things are really cheap and covered by cybersecurity standards. Yeah.
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. I came down the stairs the other morning to an inch of water throughout my house and a dreadful leak, and I couldn't find the phone number for either the insurance or the plumber. And this is the same thing, isn't it? It is a disaster if you suffer a cyber attack of any description, whether it's personal or for your business, isn't it? So it's important to have some processes and standards, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, with cybersecurity, there's a huge amount of advice out there. Lots of, things that we've linked that will be, sent out after this session as well. But what does the standard, kind of offer separately? Well, it's all the things that Dave mentioned. It's demonstrating to other organizations and to your customers that you've taken into account all of these best practices, which have been devised by a group of world experts who've benefited from all of their years of experience. And that can allow you to comply with, let's say, procurement requirements for large organizations, especially in cybersecurity. Dave mentioned supply chains. Supply chain security is one of the biggest headaches in cybersecurity. Large companies are really worried that attackers will try and target their suppliers. And so part of their procurement requirements are often to show that you're certified or compliant with a standard. So that's one of the things. Can also get you cheaper insurance. Speaking of having a flooded house.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Well,
hear
yeah.
about
Well,
that.
it is. It's like having a burglar alarm, isn't it? And some window locks, straight away your insurance goes down. So presumably, if you've got security around your business. And interestingly, there you mentioned supply chains, and this, with the FSB, we're for sole traders and small business owners, and they might well be part of a larger supply chain for big business. And so it's important that we shore ourselves up and follow standards as small business owners. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You can also use it for your own procurement processes. You can ask, other companies whose services you want to use. You can check that they're compliant with standards, and there are also standards looking at the interplay between supply chains as well. So yeah, as you
Yeah.
said, there's 90,000, so it covers quite a lot of topics.
And I know that I've done a little bit of research, and we've had a little bit of a chat, and we always think of cybercrime because of the news that it's, some foreign force that's going to come into our shores, and, but these things can happen literally in the same street. Give us that example that you shared with me about the two businesses in Wales.
Oh yeah, it was a good story I heard from a regional cybercrime unit where I'm based in South Wales, that they had two restaurants on the same street, and they were attacking each other's online booking system because the competition is quite fierce in Cardiff for restaurants, I can tell you. So yeah, cybercrime can come from the other side of the world, but can also come from next door.
I just can't imagine what that would have been like when they both found out about each other. That's a
Yeah,
drama in itself, isn't it?
I think the regional cybercrime unit was not pleased. I think there were some repercussions.
Yes, and on that note, we'll leave it there. Matilda, we'll come back to you very shortly. I'm going to come to Thomas next. Thomas, you're a cybersecurity professional. How do we sort of create this sense of trust that we've alluded to?
So, great question, Dave. One of the challenges with cyber is you can go down the path of spending a lot of money and a lot of effort in that space. But I'd say the first step is focus on your own cyber literacy. So are you comfortable with some of the language? Do you understand what's important to your business and what's appropriate? What's nice about the ISO standards that you can get from BSI is they're designed to work for small companies that are one-person companies, going all the way up to large enterprises for hundreds of thousands of people. So it's designed to scale, but you can pick and choose what's appropriate to your business at that time. So I'd usually say the first step is start with building up your own knowledge, and reading the standards is one good way. There's other sources that BSI offer. They offer a training program as well. They've got an introduction course on, say, ISO 27001, which is the information security standard for information security. And there's a suite of other standards that kind of tie into that. So usually the first step is understand your own sort of level of knowledge, and then be curious and ask some questions. And that will lead you down the path of what's appropriate at this time.
I mean, certainly, for a lot of small businesses and sole traders, obviously, we didn't come into business to worry about cyber attacks and all of that. We came in for the love of what we do. We probably haven't even thought about employing or hiring a cybersecurity expert, and we perhaps even couldn't afford it. And you talk about the support available, and I'd be starting right at rung one. How does that work? I mean, if I wanted to inquire about these standards, where do I start?
Good questions. I'd say, as a company, you don't necessarily need to hire a cyber full-time employee right out of the gate. If that's not important to your business, or if it's not practical at that point. Some small companies, for example, won't have a full-time CFO. They might hire a fractional CFO to come in, because you need to have someone that is looking at the books and filing accounting. Same approach with cyber, same approach with maybe hiring a lawyer. You can look at fractional options that are available as a way to kind of say, how do I bring someone in exactly when I need them, and then apply that type of logic to the business. I think the important thing is understanding what your business is doing and having a conversation, about what are the risks that are going to be unique to that particular business. One of the things that Matilda mentioned, if it's payments. If you're accepting payment cards, there's a risk associated with that. Dave, you were mentioning flooding. It could be that, if your windows are on a digital or electronic sort of device that will open them, that could be broken, or there could be a cyber attack, or something could happen that could cause flooding in a building. So
Wow.
all types of aspects could be analyzed. And part of this is trying to think about your business. What are the possibilities of risk? And then applying what's appropriate at that time without necessarily spending too much money, but spending where you are able to kind of balance the level of risk you're willing to accept. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I'm thinking that's almost like doing a self-audit.
Yeah.
But I'd still need guidance. I mean, let's be honest, who would really think about checking the, I mean, I've got some lamps that come on that I can operate from my phone when I'm away.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm horrified that the fact that somebody might hack into them and cancel my recording of the, Six Nations rugby or something. I don't know this stuff, but it's all linked, isn't it? Once you've got access, there are dodgy things people can do. So I guess my question is, where's the checklist? Where's the audit thing that I can download and literally go around my office thinking, what's going on here?
Yeah, so again, another good question. The standards themselves kind of act as a checklist, and you can take the standard initially and say, I'm now creating my cyber literacy. I understand what's in it, and that could be the first step. If you do find that you've got customers and you want to go that step further, BSI and other companies will offer certification where they'll formally come in, audit you, and give you a certificate specifically, not just for information security, but for a wide range of management standards that the BSI offer within that space. There's a different cost associated with that. That's kind of going a step beyond. But if you find that you really want another pair of eyes, someone to come in and audit, provide advice and guidance, that certification process is a good way to not only get that certification once, but on an annual basis, have someone come in and look at areas for continuous improvement. So the other option is if you don't necessarily have a full-time cyber person, hire someone fractionally. So I operate as a fractional chief information security officer, and sometimes having someone with that experience that can come in part-time, either advising you from a board perspective, or just being able to come in for an hour or so a week or an hour a month. It's good to have a check-in with an expert to be able to ask these questions to.
The most subtle plug I think I've seen. Have you got a book coming out or anything, Thomas?
No plugs. But I think this is also to plug FSB. FSB has a lot of access to experts, and part of the advantage of that community is you've got access to legal experts. And so I would view it the same way. Use your network, use the people you have. It doesn't necessarily need to be one particular company, but realize that you don't need to go all in. You just need to understand that you've got an area that you need to grow your knowledge with, and then reach out to your network to try to bridge that gap.
Great tip. And we're going to all share some tips later, but that is a great one. Explore your network and make good use of the people that you know, and of course, BSI and FSB. Let's bring Sarah in. So Sarah, I'm going to shift the topic slightly to energy management standards, and obviously a massively hot topic. I mean, what, 5-10 years ago, we weren't even thinking about energy or energy prices. Perhaps we weren't even thinking about going green. Some were, some weren't. So there's sustainability issues, costs, some savings, efficiencies, sustainability I've mentioned. That's your area of expertise, Sarah. Give us some instruction, if you like, especially for small business owners.
Okay, well, the need for energy management, as you've said, is really quite key now. It's become much more essential that everybody is thinking about how to manage their resources and their costs with the current climate, and also thinking again about not just the political issues and the pressures on costs, but also about potentially about the climate crisis itself, and being able to reduce your resource and energy usage as much as possible in order to save and reduce emissions. So one of the key things about standards, there are two big standards here that I'll talk about, but which are particularly concerned with energy management, and that's the Energy Management Systems Standard, and also a phased approach, which is something that a phased approach to actually implementing an energy management system in an organization, which is something which I think would be of great interest to FSB users, because it's much more about taking a really step-by-step approach and deciding, systematically how you might put something in place in your organization, and think about improving performance for energy, improving the efficiency, and thinking about also how to get your consumptions down. And it's available for free at the moment via the and Rita will introduce herself in a moment, I know, via the Climate Hub, so the Business Climate Hub, that's run by government. So that's something that to be aware of. It's a useful standard, and really it is all about thinking carefully about the approach that you take throughout your entire organization, and it can reap so many benefits to have every aspect of an organization's operations, to think about those very specific things in a particularly careful step-by-step fashion.
And of course, this is measurable. I mean, with the cyber stuff, you only hope that it's successful. And if you never have a cyber attack or a data breach or something, you'd like to think it was the standards and the procedures and all of the things that you've done. But with energy, you can measure it. You can measure it by consumption. You can manage it by cost, by, green output, emissions you've mentioned. So it's something that, you can literally share the good news when you're having success, can't you?
Absolutely. And there's ways to set those, advice on how to set that, set your measurement, your targets, and your goals within the standard, and thinking about which things you're going to focus on and which your milestones will be. I went to a while back, this might be interesting, to interview somebody, a big organization this was, that had put in place the energy management system, and within a year, it's a chicken supplier. I don't know if I should mention that, but anyway, it was
because I was going to pick you for this. This is great. This is a chicken supplier. Tell us about this, because you think of manufacturing, but you perhaps wouldn't think of farming or industries. Go on, tell me.
Absolutely. So it's the biggest chicken producer and supplier in the UK, and it produces about 4.5 million birds a week, or it did a few years ago when I went to talk to them about implementing their energy management system throughout the organization. And they were talking glowingly about how it had affected the culture in the whole organization, and how it had brought people together to start thinking really creatively about ways that they could change things through, in their particular area. But also one of the key things that they noted was that within a year, they'd managed to save about 1,000 megawatt hours of grid electricity, and were thinking already about, selling it back to the grid. So that's the kind of measurement that you're talking about. That's a really, it's very tangible for an organization. But also they had all these other benefits, other sort of side effects, if you like, which is often the case with management systems, where you put them in place. The changes in, the way that people are thinking causes other, knock-on effects to happen. So people feel better about the organization. Health and safety issues tend to go down. There's been a fair amount of research on the way that management systems have that effect within organizations. So there's a sort of it's quite integrated. It's quite sort of holistic, putting in place the management system in this sort of way.
And you touched on savings, which everybody's ears will prick up. That's what we want. We want to save some money. You even talked there about getting money, cash back, I suppose we could call it, from selling your energy back to the grid. But I suppose other people are going, oh, that's all very well, but if I've got to have solar panels fitted, or a new boiler, or we've seen the top tips about turning radiators down and all of that, but if you've got to put some infrastructure in or some hardware, there's a cost. So let's talk about cost, Sarah. What are we thinking here?
Well, as I say, you're looking at the cost benefit scenario here. When if you put in place a management system, you have all of those other benefits that kind of accrue to you. But and also it very much depends on the organization's operations themselves, whether or not it's how big it is, what you're actually going to focus on. And as I said, the standards tend to really focus in on thinking about the pragmatic approach for you, for your organization. You have to think about what your key priorities are going to be and how you're going to be able to phase it given your own resources and what you're able to actually do. And that's one of the key things about the standard I mentioned, which gives you a phased approach, because it really helps you to think very critically about what it is you need to really be thinking about first. Which level are you going to? And that will be something you need to be thinking about when you're thinking, well, is this something, we can't throw lots of consultants at this. We're a tiny organization, but we can do this, and here are some ideas, here's some guidance on how you can actually put this piece into place.
And I think, you talk about the phases there, but also the planning, because you might be saying, well, we're not going to see a return on our investment financially, maybe for say 5 years or longer. But we can predict what those savings will be, but that our immediate impact will be on the environment or on,
Absolutely, you can think about that exactly. You can think that you're having an impact on the overarching need to reach emissions targets for net zero. You can be thinking about the fact that and that kind of thing, as I was saying earlier about the cultural aspects of putting in place a management system. It really gives a feel-good factor for your organization. It helps with your own purpose and your own mission to be a useful organization within the economy. Something that isn't just there for creating your own profits, but also for thinking about the planet and others and society as well.
Yeah, and it's good to see that people have moved that way, and people coming into industries are coming with that agenda and are even asking questions at interview. What are your standards and what are your values around sustainability? So that's good to know. Let's bring Rita in now. How are you, Rita? You're sitting patiently as the last person I've come to so far. But tell us, what are the government doing about this energy efficiencies for small businesses?
Thanks, Dave. Of course, I can give a quick overview of some of the government energy efficiency support available to SMEs in the UK. Firstly, companies across England, Wales, and Northern Ireland can benefit from the support offered through the IETF, or the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. The IETF provides grant funding towards the cost of studies and deployment projects that reduce the energy consumption and emissions produced by industrial sites of all sizes, so including SMEs. Phase 3 of the IETF will allocate up to 185 million in 2024. And the spring 2024 application window opened on the 29th of Jan and will close on the 19th of April. What's more, in October of 2023, we launched the Business Energy Advice Service pilot in the West Midlands, which offers eligible SMEs a package of subsidised energy assessments and grants to implement energy efficiency measures. The pilot will enable 4,000 companies in the region to benefit from expert energy saving advice and improvements funded by government. Subject to future spending decisions and findings from the pilot, we're also looking to develop a larger scale energy efficiency offering, which could include the expansion of the Energy Advice Service pilot. What's more, in April last year, we launched our Business Energy Efficiency campaign, which is designed to help SMEs to both understand and reduce their energy consumption, and in turn helps them to manage their bills. So it encourages SMEs to reduce energy consumption and offers them guidance on how they can go about making significant savings whilst cutting emissions. Complementary to this is the UK Business Climate Hub website, which again supports SMEs to reduce their emissions. It includes comprehensive, practical and tailored advice, which can be be browsed by sector or theme. It also lists the current funding opportunities across the UK, and sets out case studies and educational events. And then finally, the climate change agreement scheme offers reduced rates in climate change levy, worth approximately 300 million a year across 53 industrial sectors, in return for businesses meeting energy and or carbon targets. Around 2,600 businesses participate in the scheme, including SMEs. And the current CCA scheme provides reduced CCL rates for eligible businesses who meet their target until March 2027, following the scheme extension that was announced in 2023. I think it was on the 15th. Additionally, we've recently published a consultation for a future CCA scheme, which is due to close on the 14th of Feb this year. And to summarize, that was just a quick overview of some of the support that's available, or the government support that's available to SMEs in the UK. But please do head over to the UK Business Climate Hub to see what other support and advice is available to SMEs.
Yeah, and I think because that was a whirlwind tour, and I'm here in 14th of February, and I know that that's next week because it's Valentine's Day, and I've got to go and buy a card for my wife, and so we will be sharing the resources that you've mentioned, or the links to websites that all of you have so far mentioned, so that anybody's busy trying to make a note of those key dates or where to go for funding. Because I think a lot of people will think this is all about money and funding, but you mentioned a lot of other resources. We will be sharing that information, so don't panic. But Rita, while I've got you, so mentioned some events, you've mentioned funding applications, but it isn't always about money, it's about support and advice. And are there any resources that you might have missed off that comprehensive list?
Of course, yeah. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, there are resources available for SMEs around energy management. So one of the key resources available for SMEs around energy management is the ISO standard 50005. As Sarah mentioned, in 2021, DESNZ, or BEIS at the time, sponsored up to 100,000 free copies of the standard for UK-based SMEs to download. The standard provides guidelines for a phased implementation of an energy management system. It allows businesses, in particular SMEs, with limited resources to implement energy management improvements at their own pace and in selected areas of their business. The standard provides SMEs with means to develop a practical low-cost approach to energy management, with the aim of reducing their energy consumption, bills, and greenhouse gas emissions. The standard outlines a phased implementation approach by using 12 core elements based on ISO 50001, and can help build a foundation for a business to then work towards ISO 50001. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, the free copies of the standard will be available for download and on the BSI website and the UK Business Climate Hub until March 2024.
So some of these dates are coming at us fast and furious, aren't they? So I think I hope the website doesn't crash after this, because everyone's going to be heading to the hub to look at that. Well, listen, I mean, that's a whirlwind of advice, and I'll come back to you shortly to get a bit of a recap and anything else you might think of. We're going to bring David back in. David, let's go back to these standards. I don't know, I'm going to come up with a wacky example now. So I'm in the events industry, so you'll find me on stage in venues across the world, mainly the UK. And one of the banes of my life, if I'm not working with a professional event AV company, is the standard of the sound system within the venue. So, you know, it's tap, 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 but it's really awful. So if I wanted to get a standard on audio systems within hospitality industry, for example, and I'm just being wild, could I be involved in that as a small business owner to address that issue, for example?
Well, Dave, we will never standardize you, Dave, but I can tell you that we have standards already for those kind of products.
Really?
But absolutely, the voice of SMEs is essential. If we're going to make sure that the standards are useful for everyone, We need to hear from SMEs about the issues that you face and the topics that you want addressed in the standards. And there's a simple way to do that. You can get involved directly through the public commenting phase of the standards, so you can input your views on them. You can suggest ideas for new standards, or work with organisations like trade associations or membership bodies like FSB, and they'll amplify your voice and put that into the standards process for us.
See what you did there? Amplify your voice. I mean, you couldn't have scripted that if you'd have tried. It's brilliant. So what about standards that already exist that maybe become tired or a little bit outdated, that, you know, that I might, or any small business owner might go, do you know what, that's a great standard, but it doesn't go far enough, or life's moved on, things have changed. Can they sort of message you and say, by the way, I think this needs a bit of a tweak?
Yeah, every standard goes through a review process. So they don't just sit there gathering dust on the shelf. They have to still meet the state of the art, otherwise we delete them. We delete about 1,500 standards a year,
Wow.
most of which we replace with new versions, which reflect the new technology or new processes or new expectations. You talked about the fact that people are coming into the workforce with certain expectations about what a good employer looks like. Well, we need to make sure that the standards that we have in place around management reflect that. So the standards do revise every 3 or 4 years. If you've used a standard and you feel that there's an issue in there that's not being addressed or could be addressed better, we'd love to hear from SMEs about that in particular.
And presumably they're far-reaching. You know, we talked about energy, we've talked about cyber, but I'm assuming health and wellness. So, you know, my chair needs to be of a certain standard if I'm sitting at my desk all day, or how many breaks I can take if I'm looking at my screen. And I'm assuming this is evolving every single day of the week.
And these are big issues for SMEs, right? You want to keep your workforce healthy and you want to make sure they're productive. So things like the health and safety at work standards that we have, international health and safety management standards, exist exactly to give you that kind of guidance about those practical measures you should take in order to keep your workforce safe.
And when we talked earlier, right at the top of the webinar, I mentioned that, you know, these are UK standards, 90,000, and international. Is there any conflict that maybe a standard from another country doesn't meet the standard of the UK, let's say, or vice versa, and what we can do about that?
Well, I mean, that is an issue. You know, we can't tell another country to write a different standard, but what we do is work in an international network, ISO, when 160 national standards bodies come together to make their views heard, and the UK is a leading participant in that. So we're making sure that the voice of the UK is absolutely at the forefront of those international standards. And if the international standard that comes out reflects the needs of our stakeholders and SMEs in the UK, we adopt it as our national standard as well. And those 90,000 we've spoken about includes loads of standards that we wrote and now the rest of the world are adopting.
Yeah, and presumably they're easily searchable if, you know, like the one I mentioned, and it was a great comeback that you said, well, actually, there's already one that exists. Who knew?
I'll send you it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point. The content of the standards is deep and it's complex, and we've got great search tools to help you find the bit of the standard that works for you.
Brilliant. And presumably people should brag about that. You know, if I go to a venue, they should say, oh, by the way, Dave, you know, we reached the standard on audio, whatever it might be, you know, hearing loops, or all of those things. You need to market these things, don't you?
You said right at the outset, it's about trust, and it's about trust and confidence to your suppliers and your customers that actually when they come to you, they're getting the best service. So if I'm manufacturing an amplifier or a sound system, I want to tell my customers it's the best on the market because it meets these standards.
Brilliant,
absolutely.
brilliant.
But remember, as well as that, it's telling people you can just adopt a piece for yourself. You don't have to adopt the whole standard. Take a chapter that works for you, use it, and see if it improves your business.
It's almost like a guarantee. I like that idea. I think people will be thinking about how they can enhance their service offer or product offer by adopting a standard, and that's another layer of trust, as you say, or a way of convincing people to do business with you, or that you're a reliable, trustworthy supplier. Matilda, let's bring you back in. Typically, what does it mean to get certified, do you think?
Yeah, so in the kind of cybersecurity context, ISO 27001 that Thomas already mentioned, that's the main standard that companies get certified against, and that involves getting an external organization. So BSI provide this service, but other companies as well, to come in and check how you're running your operations. For 27001, it's a two-stage process, so they'll look at what you're doing today, and then they'll come back later and see how you've kind of set up your system to have this continual improvement. And then the certification lasts for 3 years. For an organization, and then you get recertified again, and that gives you that piece of paper that you can take to other organizations. You can slap it on your website, stick it over every PowerPoint, put it on your LinkedIn profile picture, I don't know, anywhere you like,
Yeah.
and say, like, I've complied with this, and
Yeah,
come
I
and
mean, because
try my
sometimes,
services. Yeah.
I mean, Rita mentioned a number to ISO 50001 or whatever, and I'm like, I have no idea what that was, but it sounded impressive. So presumably we
The
have
energy
to.
management standard,
That,
the energy management system.
I
Sorry.
love that. This is great. Honestly, put me right. But if it is just a number, then it for the person on the street, they might go, I have no idea what that is. So presumably it comes with a bit of a description, Matilda, that summarizes what you've done.
Yeah, that standard. I think the problem is I started at BSI in September, and I promised I wasn't going to start saying numbers all the time, and it's started to happen already because there are so many. It's the easy way to refer to them. But yeah, that one is the information security and privacy management system. But
I'm
it's long.
impressed.
The words are long as well. So
That's your specialist subject on Mastermind is ISO numbers and what they actually mean. That's a hot topic. Thomas, I'm going to come to you next, and then I'll bring Sarah back in. Someone just quickly mentioned about Cyber Essentials. You know, we were talking about checks, and I thought of Cyber Essentials, but I couldn't remember the name of it. Maybe it's got a number. But with Cyber Essentials, there was that checklist. So how is that different from the standards?
Yeah, good question. So one thing just to kind of mention on a previous point that you just were talking to Matilda about. So there are a lot of reference numbers, right? 90,000 standards, they need a way of kind of indexing them. But one of the things that's nice is you can just go in and search by subject. So you can search for cyber, you can search for security, search for things like Cyber Essentials, and you'll get that text-based response. So it's easy to be able to kind of navigate and find what you want, what area that you want. To your question about Cyber Essentials. So Cyber Essentials is a UK government program. So one of the links that I put up in the Q&A is around the NSCS, or the National Cybersecurity Center from the UK government. And they've got a small business program, and Cyber Essentials is something that applies across any company that in the UK that wants to try to improve any of their technology devices that are internet facing. So it's focused primarily around pen testing and validating that pen testing to make sure that those devices are protected. It could be a website, could be a mobile device, but anything that's internet facing. Where ISO 27001 kind of goes a little bit beyond that. And this is where some of the questions that were asked before, and I think Danny was mentioning this on the Q&A, is that 27001 is a way to kind of provide a management system to protect everything within your business. So whether that be your processes, your information, your data, the services you offer. So it's a way to kind of look at extending that. What's nice about what the government's done is Cyber Essentials and 27001 fit into each other very well. So they're designed to be very compatible, where one of it is validating and testing exactly what you have that's internet facing. The other is, do you have a business process in place to define what's important to your business, assess risk, set policy, and then have if you wanted to get certified, which you don't necessarily need to, if you don't want to go down that path. But if you do want to get certified, it's a way to have that external auditor, as you were mentioning earlier, come in to give you that advice and guidance.
And you mentioned there, I mean, somebody coming in to give you the advice and guidance, and you mentioned pen testing, penetration testing. I worked with a white hat hacker. He was about 24 years old, and he demonstrated literally live with a member of the audience how quickly he could get their email, password, and all sorts. Scared everybody to death. We had a little look at the dark web. Wow. Should we be frightening people to get in these standards?
No, and I think knowledge is power. I mentioned earlier, cyber literacy is really important. The more that you know, the better protected you'll be. And the more that you'll feel comfortable that you've got a path forward for what's important to you. There was a news article, I think in Forbes about a week or two ago, where they talked about a large database of 26 billion IDs and passwords that were found on the dark web from websites that people use, like LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or X as it's called now. And I think understanding that their cyber risks are going to continue to happen. It's not going to go away, and it's not going to slow down. So as much as I would like to hope that things stay the same and don't change that much, the reality is the world is constantly changing. So cyber is one of those things you do need to keep up to the times and just understand that what is secure for today won't necessarily be secure for tomorrow, and that's okay. We are all kind of trying to deal with the rate of change that's going on, and that's where educating yourself, having access to information, using your network, bringing in experts, all those things will kind of help us together as a community sort of roll with the times.
Brilliant. Appreciate you saying that. And it's good to know that you've got an upbeat response. Sarah, I was trying to bait Thomas into saying, yeah, these are the deadly things that can happen to you in your business. Because we see that, don't we, in a lot of the marketing is, these hooded people in a dark room and they've suddenly got your password to your bank or whatever. With energy management, we tend to go the other way, don't we? And you've already talked about the chicken farm, and hopefully the chickens were all right in all of that. They're not sitting there suffering because of energy savings. Everything's done with everybody in mind in every example that you use. But with the standards that you could apply, typically, what are people doing? What are the good news stories? The things that the quick wins and the things that people can put into their management of energy, today and this week and in the next few months?
Well, I mean, and these are things obviously that are within the standard itself, and as we've already described, and as Rita mentioned, around the phased approach standard that is available on the Climate Hub, but and also from our website, of course. But there are things like, so it would talk about you set goals, how to set a goal, with energy management, for example. And I'll talk about energy because that's where we started, and I think that's probably, I can think more specifically about the energy piece there. There are 4 levels set out in that standard, for example, in the phased approach guideline standard, about enabling. You go through, the first level is you enable your organization to do a thing. The second one is you're enhancing that and raising yourself up a little bit more. And then you're thinking about an emerging management system. You're actually putting something together that's really going to, really make a difference to what you're doing and start to save those costs. And finally, you're establishing that system and maybe thinking, I'm going to get certified to it, and then if I have a certification, this is something that will help in procurement when I'm going, tendering for work and things like that. So, but there are things in there about reviewing your energy, thinking about energy performance indicators and baselines, setting objectives and energy targets and action, and putting in place really specific action plans. Also thinking about the people in your organization and how you're going to skill them properly, so that, I talked about the fact in that chicken supplier organization, they really wanted to bring their people along with them. So they were educating them about energy management and really educating them on the things that they could change, so that you're building that competence and awareness throughout the organization of what it is that needs to happen in order to make the change, in order to get to that point where you're part of making the change within your business, within your organization itself. And the other sort of issues that you might look to cover are things like operations and maintenance, the procurement and design of what you're doing, so that will make a difference to the energy management as well. How you're going to monitor, measure, and analyze what's there. Reviewing and improving the system as you go along. and communicating it both within your organization, again, to the point about competence raising, and also externally, so that you're able to talk to your customers and suppliers about what you're doing. And that's a positive. I think, we've all mentioned the fact that this really does kind of help the image and the profile of the organization, as well as giving you a sense of something that you can really you're doing to make a difference to not just your bottom line, but also to the issues that the larger challenges in society. Yeah, I think that's probably talked about, but there are lots and lots of very specific things that are talked about in standards, as I think with all my colleagues here have mentioned, that really, it's a very deep kind of content in a standard, and it really sort of helps you sort of bring yourself along to somewhere completely different.
I'll give you a quick example of where it doesn't work. 25 years ago, I was working in a big office, and I'd been brought up by parents who lived through the war and were told, to save energy at all times, even though a lot of energy was being used in the war effort, and they carried that with them. So my dad was one of those guys that would go around, switch all the lights off, turn all the plugs off, and it just was ingrained in me. And I remember going out for lunch, and I literally crawled under the desk and turned the main switch off, thinking it would turn my computer off, and turned everybody's off in the whole of the shop floor. And literally everybody was sitting there going, computers have gone down, and everybody lost all their work. So I can tell you I wasn't very popular, but I mean, we've come a long way from just switching plug sockets off and doing things like that. So there are probably a few things that you shouldn't do, but there's a lot more that you should be doing. David, let's come to you. With the BSI, people can get involved. You can become a member, and we've already mentioned 90,000. That's a huge amount of standards, and 1,500 are being dropped every year, you were saying, and there'll be lots being added, and there'll be things that'll be tweaked. So how can people get involved? What's it all about? Why would I want to become a member?
So no organization needs all of those standards to run their business, and the people who know best about what they need are small business owners. And so today we're launching a new trial offer in partnership with the Federation of Small Businesses, and we're going to be providing access to that entire collection of British, European, international standards, some 90,000 standards. You can search our database, you can find the standards that you need, that your competitors are using, you can view them, and you can start using the knowledge in them immediately to power your business. So to make it more cyber secure, to make it more energy efficient, to meet your expectations of your customers. And we're limiting it, as we're kicking it off, we're going to limit it only to 100 micro enterprises. So if you meet that definition of a micro enterprise, we're going to start working with you and to see how this serves your needs, because I believe that actually we can make in the UK the most resilient small business sector, empowered by standards, really driving forward the UK economy, because that's the SMEs are the growth engine of the UK economy. Price is £360 a year, which we believe is the lowest priced access model anywhere in the world. And we want to hear from SMEs who use it. We want to hear them tell us which standards are working for you. Have you saved money? Has it opened up new business lines? Are you exporting now? And let's see if we can't get everybody using this collection of standards and really drive the UK forward.
Definitely. Well, it's £1 a day, isn't it? 360 quid. It's about £1 a day, which is, what can you get for £1? It's a no-brainer in that respect. Just take me back to the beginning when people are applying these standards. Sarah mentioned about energy standards and the phased approach and checklists and things that you can do. Just remind me, is there a governing body then that they send somebody out, like if you were doing your driving test and go, right, we need to check this, we need to check that. Yeah, well done. You need to work on that bit, and we'll come back in a week and sign it off. Is that how it works?
Well, that's one model, and organizations can come in and audit you and check that you've met the standards, so that then you can tell the world that you're doing that. And organizations like BSI and many others will come in and do that for you. But to be honest, most of these standards just contain sensible guidance to help organizations to do their business better. You don't need anyone else to come in and tell the world you're using it. Just take that knowledge, put it into your systems and processes, make better products, make better services on the back of it. If you want that full, third-party assessment, you can get that too. But actually, I just think the power that's in the knowledge is the key that we're selling here.
It makes you efficient. I mean, we don't want people to just fake it and go, oh yeah, I'm reaching that standard, and they haven't really even looked at it and read it, and they're just saying it for the sake of it. I'm presuming they'd get found out very quickly. It sounds like to me that you're encouraging people to do it anyway, whether you get the badge or not, because these are all things that are going to improve the way your business operates.
SME owners keep telling me that they often have to hire consultants in to help them run their business better. The consultants have written these standards. The experts have written these standards. It's all there already written for you. It's a simple and cheap way of doing it yourself.
I believe that when people signed up for this webinar, there was a form that they can complete. So you need to go back into the registration process, I guess, or maybe we'll put a link on the subsequent follow-up email. There'll be ways that people can be one of those, what did you say, 100?
Let's look, we're launching it with 100 micro enterprises. Yeah, I think there was an expression of interest form that we shared earlier. Fill that in and send it in to us, and we'll get you on the database ASAP.
Brilliant. I'm going to come back to you and give you the last word, but we're coming to the end of the webinar now, and I want to go around the screen and get your best top tip. Matilda, let's start with you. If there was one thing that you would say right now to make a difference, what would it be?
Oh, okay. My top one thing is probably create a backup of your most important bit of data, because you'll thank yourself if you ever need it.
Yeah, but you know, and then someone said, "Oh, yeah, but the cloud's not secure." And you know, oh God, shall I back up the backup in the cloud? You know, I mean, how far back do you back up?
Yeah, my mum used to hide hard drives in our neighbours' houses back in the
I've
day
done
when
that.
we went on holiday.
Yeah.
But I don't think you need to go that far, and a lot of cloud providers have got pretty good security themselves.
Yeah,
So.
no, I'm the same. God, I've got a lot in common with your mum. I'm the same. Got this perfect hiding space for my hard drive. Let's hope the house doesn't burn down, or else I've lost that as well. Anyway, that's another consideration. Matilda, that's brilliant. Let's go to Sarah. Sarah, top tip.
Top tip. Don't be fazed by the fact that it's a complicated thought to do energy management, because if you take a phased approach, if you take a really simplistic approach to it, you set realistic milestones and keep assessing your progress along the way and see how you're making the difference, then it all kind of comes together. So just don't sort of let it, the whole sort of enormity of it, kind of drag you down. Think we can do this. So there is a pathway to this that we can do. Yeah.
And I presume, and you can allocate certain tasks to certain, if you're in a team, it would be a great team exercise, and you can allocate and hopefully get the job done there. Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Rita, let's come to you next. What's your top tip?
Thanks, Dave. Sorry to sound like a broken record, but please head to the UK Business Climate Hub website to see a full list of the current funding opportunities across the UK. And sorry to cheat, Dave, I've got a second top tip. Please download your free copy of the ISO 50005 standard.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. I mean, and we will send those links, because you've given us a lot of information. So 2 tips in one. Tom, let's come to you. And Tom with the American accent, if people are wondering where that...
Yeah, I tried to speak English. It just doesn't work.
It works for me. You sound great.
So, yeah, I've been here for 20 years. It just hasn't quite stuck in yet. I'd say probably my best tip is most people are going, from a cyber attack perspective, are going to try to steal your credentials. So passwords, everyone uses them, websites, but most people use the same password for multiple things. So my advice would be look at a password management solution. If you can't buy one or invest in one, there are some ones that are online that you can kind of use, but you can use a browser and maybe store your passwords there, or maybe like with your phone, there's ways to kind of do it. The advice is every password should be different. And it's all about the length of the password if you're just using a password. But a better solution is something called MFA, or multi-factor authentication, or 2FA, or two-factor authentication. And if you can move to stronger authentication, that's really going to help. That's the crown jewel in trying to prevent someone from stealing your credentials and trying to spoof logging in as you. So if there's one takeaway, that would be the one I would focus on.
And you can do that multi-factor authentication on things like WhatsApp and lots of other things.
Tons
And lots of free videos. I see them all the time on Instagram of these top tip guys and people that just go, do this on your iPhone, click, 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 and you're done. Right. So, and in the final minute, David, your top tip. I give the final word to you.
I'd say for SMEs, don't reinvent the wheel. You don't need to do it. The best practice guidance has been written. Learn from your peers. Take that instructional advice and adopt it yourself in your business. You don't need to worry about this yourself. It's lots of these issues have already been considered, and hopefully the guidance you need is there in the standards.
Brilliant. Beautifully put. Well, listen, guys, thank you to David, Matilda, Thomas, Sarah, I beg your pardon, and Rita, for joining us. You're incredible. I hope people will find you on LinkedIn and you know, keep the conversation going. For those people that want to know more about BSI, literally go to their website. You heard about the offer. First 100 get that little reduction, and there's a lot of support. You heard as well, Rita, those links to websites. We're going to send all those out in an email, so don't worry. And also you can watch this again on catch up. But I mentioned at the top of the show, as it were, that I'm a member of the FSB, the Federation of Small Businesses. Our panelists today have also mentioned it. So again, I urge you, join with us. There are a lot of things that you'll benefit from. Not least of all, we are the voice of small business owners, especially in government, whichever government is sitting. And we have a lot of power, strength in numbers to get things changed. And that's how we have these terrific affiliations with people like BSI. So do consider going along to the FSB website and taking a look, fsb.org.uk, and think about joining up. But for now, we are bang on time. It's been a pleasure to be your host. We'll see you all again soon. Thanks for joining us.